Hi guys, welcome. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Amy Stevens. She is a very highly recommended by our favorite coach, Ben, registered dietitian. I'll let her introduce herself a little bit, but we're super excited to have her here to teach us all about race nutrition, marathon nutrition, what is great to do in running, what is great not to do in running, and we're thrilled to have her. So welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to talk about nutrition for the marathon. I'm training for a marathon as well, so I'm right in there with you guys, and I can commiserate with the heat and the training and everything. And so a little bit about me, I work with professional athletes that are training for mid-distance track. They went to the Olympic trials this year, so I work with that group. I also work with the NYU track and field team. And they did great last year. We placed second, which was like the best we've ever done. So that was really cool. And I also work a lot with all different types of adult runners or amateur runners just looking to PR or to run their first marathon. And I ran my first marathon, I think maybe about 9, 10 years ago. And I run like 1 to 2 a year. I've raced anything from 1 mile to 50K. So I can share all of my insights, and I have a really good, strong base. And I'm just going to share my screen and see if we can get started here. Let's see here. We did not practice this part.
Technology is great.
I know, I'll get there.
Sometimes hard, and we appreciate your patience.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. Oh, where did I put it? Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me find that. So Ashley, is there anything you want to share while I'm finding it? There it is.
Yeah, I was just about to say,
Got it.
if I'm actually going to activate the chat again, if you are a mentor, a TFK mentor, please feel free to let everyone know what your best nutrition tip is. And we'll see if Amy has anything similar. Oh, you know what? You can wait to do that after because it looks like Amy is ready to go.
Okay, so can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Let's get started. Okay, so I already introduced myself, and let's just get started right into the topics that I'm going to cover. So, the one thing I always like to start with, there's lots of information. There's tons and tons of nutrition information about marathons, and you'll get lots of different perspectives. You want to keep it simple. Talking about too many different things or focusing on so many different aspects of it are just going to make it very confusing and leave you very stressed. So the topics that I'm going to cover are runner's fuel, the basic nutrients that you're going to need, like carbs, proteins, and fats, fueling a long run. That includes the gels, hydration, and electrolytes. And based on where everyone is located, I think we're going to have to spend a lot of time on that. Recovery foods, carbohydrate loading, race day nutrition, and tips to avoid hitting the wall. And then we'll get to supplements at the end. And I feel like a lot of people like to have a lot of questions about supplements as well. So we'll definitely get to that. So I'm going to start with runner's fuel. And I like to start with this slide because oftentimes people think that protein is like one of the most important nutrients to focus on, and that gets a lot of attention. But carbohydrates are our main source of energy for runners. And until we see any data or research to show different, carbs are really the main source that our bodies can use for energy. And, if you're running at a slower pace where you're talking and you're able to carry on a conversation, then maybe you would use a different form of energy. But if you're trying to PR or it's your first marathon, carbohydrates are going to convert the quickest into usable energy. Protein is also really important in your diet. Because it helps with muscle repair, your immune system. However, it's not a great source of energy. And it's, yeah.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt. I'm not sure if your slide deck is moving. We're still on the title slide.
Oh, that is weird. Let's see.
And thank you, Alexia, for pointing it out.
Thank you. Okay, let's see if that works better. Okay. How is that?
We see the topic. So yep, there we go. Now it's looking good.
Let's go to the
perfect.
Thank you. We're going to start with the sample of a runner's plate. And I always like to start here because everyone has a different view of what a plate should look like for a runner. And everyone, that's one of the first questions that people ask me during a session is, what should I be eating? So here's a picture of a plate. And starting with the carbohydrates, as I mentioned, carbs should be taking up about half of your plate. And that's about 1 to 3 cups worth for the average person. And one being on the lower end, maybe that's on a recovery day or an easier day. But if you're running a little harder, like, or running longer or exercising more, like 1 to maybe more than 1 hour per day, you're going to need more carbohydrates. A long run day is definitely going to require more carbohydrates. So you can increase the amount to up to 3 cups, maybe even more, depending on what you feel that your body needs. There's really not one concrete way to describe what a plate should look like, but this is an example. Some of the best sources are things like rice, pasta, breads, potatoes, quinoa, even fruit counts as a carbohydrate. Proteins are really important as well. Those are 1/4 of the plate, and your body can really only use about 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrate per meal, which is around 3 to 6 ounces. And I have a lot of athletes that might come in and say that they're taking in tons of protein at a meal, or maybe they eat a really big dinner and they're taking in more like 40 to 60 grams in one meal. Well, our bodies are always using energy on a regular basis. So distributing the proteins throughout the day is really the way to optimize our muscle repair and optimize the use of those. Best sources are things like chicken, fish, turkey, eggs, tofu, yogurts. There's also lentils, beans. If you're more of a plant-based eater, lean beef is great, or cheeses. And those are all really great sources. And they also offer other nutrients. So they offer things like iron and other B vitamins that are really essential for a runner. Vegetables are also important. 1/4 of the plate, approximately, should be from vegetables. I had one runner who was having a lot of GI issues, and it turns out her entire plate was filled with vegetables, which is great, but she was not getting the other nutrients she needed, and that was way too much fiber, and her body just could not handle that much. And when we changed up the ratios a little bit, her body felt better, and she had a much better outcome with her running. Fats are also important. They're monounsaturated fats. They help reduce inflammation. People are always asking me, how do I reduce inflammation? What supplements can I take? But it's really getting it from food. So monounsaturated fats, those are things like avocados, olive oil, olives, nuts, seeds, and there's very specific fish that have the highest amount of omega-3s, which I listed here below. So as you can see, your body needs a lot of different nutrients, especially if you're going to ask your body to do the 26.2 journey. You have a lot of nutrients that your body's going to need to keep you healthy. So it's important to stay ahead of your fueling. Oops, just went back. So I think in this point, we're all pretty far out. Our marathon is in November. We have plenty of time. Now is the time where we want to test and experiment. So we're going to figure out what works. One thing I recommend is keeping notes of what works for you. Record it in Strava. Strava is one of those apps that you can kind of record your runs, record your fueling. You can make notes on there. There's lots of different apps that you can use, or just pen and paper. You could just write it down. Keep a notepad in your kitchen or where you keep your running gear. Be intentional about your fueling. It's not just grabbing things. Running is different than many other sports because it requires so much energy and it requires so much refueling with food. So it's important to be intentional. If you're out of your routine or traveling for work or have guests in town, it's still sticking with that same plan to give you that same kind of energy level to keep you running. Write out your nutrition plan. Actually, write it out. You can work with your coach. You can work with one of the Team for Kids coaches and write out your fueling plan. And we'll go over what a fueling plan looks like. But that way, it takes the nutrition out of the equation. When I went to the Olympic trials with my team, I would handle all the nutrition for them. And it made them so much less stressed because it's one less thing to worry about. So now is the time to be practicing and figuring out what works. Establish a solid fueling plan. And there again is so much information. It can be very overwhelming. The one thing I would say is if things work for your friend and they swear by a product, that's great for them. That may not be the best product for you. Keep it simple. Like, keep it very simple. I tell my athletes from high school to college to professional, keeping it simple will help you to stay focused. Your meals do not have to be perfect. As long as 90% of your meals consist of nutrient-dense foods, then 10% can be less nutritious. And what I mean by that is you don't have to be on or off your fueling plan or your diet. You are allowed to include foods that are just fun foods that you love, that make you feel good. A piece of cake for a birthday, a cupcake for a coworker's party. You're allowed to have these foods. And I think people run into trouble when they feel that they have to be very rigid with their eating, because it can sometimes lead to feeling bad or rumination or like maybe overdoing it. So as long as you include all your favorite foods, you will feel balanced and you're able to do all the runs and all the workouts that you plan to do. So, what to eat, fill your diet with fresh fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, healthy fats, and limit the alcohol. Alcohol definitely can take up a lot of those nutritious calories that your body needs in order to help you to fuel your runs, build glycogen, and recover. So it can really distract your body. Stock your pantry. So one way to eat well is to have these foods on hand in your kitchen. If you get hungry, and believe me, as you increase your volume of training, you will get hungry. Have those foods on hand. So let's start here with fueling a workout. 3 to 4 hours before a workout or any type of run, you want to have a mixed meal. So that's just a meal that consists of a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat. I don't expect people to get up at 4 in the morning to eat their food and then wait and then have a snack and then do the run. But if you're running later in the day, maybe your run is going to be at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, you could follow this guide for the 3 to 4 hours before. But I think my other point here is that it takes that long for your body to digest a mixed meal, 3 to 4 hours. One time I was running late with my lunch and I ended up eating a burrito and then had to fit in a run. That did not go well. So don't do that. It takes time for your body to digest food. So 1 to 2 hours before, which is what most of us are probably doing if we're running in the morning. So 1 to 2 hours before, you're going to do something like toast with banana, peanut butter, honey is great, dried fruit, waffle with jelly, a granola bar. Some of my NYU athletes will do the RX bars because those are easy and they can keep them in their dorm rooms. The key here is that you're having foods that are low in fat and low in fiber. Too much fat is going to delay that digestion, and too much fiber is also going to expand in your stomach and it's going to be really uncomfortable. So I had one athlete that was eating chia seeds, like a chia pudding right before the run, and it was giving this person like really bad stomach cramps. And once we change the timing of that chia pudding, and which is a nutritious food, you just need to have that earlier to allow your body to digest it. This person did great. If you're within 30 minutes, which sometimes if you're running late or if it's a morning and you're just rushing out the door, quick carbs. Honey stinger waffle is great. Small banana is great. Some dried dates are really good, or just having a gel. Sometimes I'll have a Martin gel for breakfast. That's not ideal, but sometimes that has to happen if you're running late and you need some fuel before you head out the door. And the reason for this is you don't want to have a stomach ache or stomach cramps when you're trying to do a tough workout. And your body's working hard enough, and all of the blood that's going to your working muscles is leaving your gut. So whatever is in your stomach is not going to be digested. So I put this up because I'm sure many of you guys are working. So fueling an evening workout. If you have to fit in those runs at the end of the day, here's what this would look like. You want to really start that workout fueled and hydrated. How many, I mean, I can't ask now, I don't want to take a poll, but I'm sure many of us have had a whole day where they didn't drink water or any fluids, and you start a workout already underhydrated. That can lead to GI issues and be really unproductive for a workout. So be on a schedule. If you know you're working out at night at a 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock with a group, be rigid with your eating. 12 to 2, have a lunch. That can be a burrito, a sandwich, a grain bowl, sushi, like anything like that is great. You'll have plenty of time to digest. And then 3 or 4 o'clock, right around that time, have a snack. Many offices, if you're going in, have huge snack walls. So grab a snack, a bar. If you're working from home, toast with banana, honey, peanut butter, waffle with jelly. Again, that's where you want to start reducing the amount of fat and fiber in your foods, so your body will have plenty of time to digest. And then that quick carb right before you head onto the track or head out for the run. Honey stinger waffle is great. Small banana, dried fruit, or gel are really good. So those are some options if you're having to go out late in the day. So a long run. Every training plan for a marathon has a long run. So these are great opportunities to practice your fueling. This is going to mimic or duplicate what you're going to do on race day. So fuel up before your run. I have a lot of runners that don't eat before their long runs. And that's fine, but if you're going more than 90 minutes, so 90 minutes, around 90 minutes is the cutoff. Your body has enough energy stored in it for 90 minutes. Beyond that, your body can run out, and that's called hitting the wall. So similar to a car, your body needs fuel in order to run. And if you don't have enough fuel, your body will not run and it will feel terrible. I remember one run I did in Van Cortlandt Park and I did not bring enough fuel. And it was one of the most horrible experiences because you feel like your legs are heavy. They feel like they will not literally leave the ground. And it's very hard to maintain your pace. So don't do that. Make sure you eat something before, and then we're going to go through how to fuel during. Gels and fluids are really the best. I like gels. There's also different types of ways to fuel, and I'll go over that. You may need electrolytes, so be open to that. And bring extra. Whatever you think you need, bring one extra, because that you never know. You never want to feel like you've run out of fuel and you don't have any and you wish you had one. They're small, you can carry it, it's pretty portable. So bring an extra. That's what I would always say. So fueling an endurance event. This is an important slide. So less than an hour and a half. During, you don't need anything. You don't need to fuel. You don't necessarily need to hydrate. If you wanted to, you can have fluids. But what I usually say for an event like this, or less than an hour and a half, you don't necessarily need it, but it's optional. Like if you feel hungry before or you need something during, because maybe you did a workout the night before, it's going to take your body 6 to 12 hours just to recover from a workout. So you may need that fuel if you've expended more than you normally do. So marathons that are lasting 1.5 to 3 hours, you're going to target around 30 to 60 grams of carb, and you're going to use water and electrolytes, or it could be Gatorade. That can be another way to get in carbs, which I'll go over. If you're running greater than 3 hours, which I think most of us are, you're going to need to increase the carbohydrates to more like 60 to 80 grams per hour. And the reason is when you start a race, you're running and you're pushing into the next meal. So the next meal requires more fuel. So it's like at home, if you were eating a breakfast, you're going to push into it. You might have a snack and then you may have a lunch, but instead of eating, you're going to be running. So you need a higher amount. So that's why it increases to the 60 to 80. So it's really important to practice this before race day. You can't show up to your race day not having an idea of how your body is going to feel. And there's so many options of different types of products out there. It's important to find the ones that work for you. So now is a great time to experiment with different gels and sports products. I have a picture here of all these different kinds. There's Martin, there's Untapped, which is made with natural products. There's all different things. Your body can hold enough energy for about 90 minutes, then it will need other forms of carbohydrate. Each gel, so each one of those packets on the right, contains around 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrate. That's the average. There is a new one, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, beta, something beta. Precision Beta maybe, but anyway, that gel had 40. I've never seen that before. So that's something that's a little bit of a different product, but most of them are going to be 20 to 30. Here are the different options that you have. And what to look for in a gel. So the most important things to look for are the carbs. How many grams of carb is this product going to give you? So we're really going to start with that 30 to 60 grams of carb an hour, which is about 1 to 2 gels on average. And you're going to look at the sugar type. Where is the carbohydrate coming from? Is it coming from natural sugars like a maple syrup? Is it coming from honey? Those are great if you have a sensitive stomach. Is it coming from dextrose, fructose? There's so many different types of products that it can be coming from. So you have to see how your body feels. You can also see if the product has electrolytes. Some have a ton of electrolytes. Most do not. Most have minimal electrolytes in them. Also look at the caffeine. I had one client who was taking in so much caffeine per hour and he didn't even realize it. And he was feeling terrible and having caffeine overload and did not realize that that was something that was in that product. So take a look at the label to know how much you're going to be taking in. And there's also different flavors. You may want to try different flavors throughout your entire race. Maybe save that really delicious one. I had one client who loved the salted watermelon and would always have that one at mile 20 because that made them feel really good. So there's different flavors, see which ones feel the best, and different textures. So again, testing these out right now is a great thing to do. And different products, like I said, have different amount of carbohydrates. Gatorade is offered on almost every course that I've ever raced on, and that can also be a great source of carbohydrate. So you may want to do a combination of a Gatorade and another product to reach your target of 30 to 60 per hour, or maybe up to more like 60 to 80. So let's talk about caffeine. Caffeine, you really want to practice, again, that is really important to practice that during your long runs to see how your body feels. There are a lot of really great benefits with caffeine. It can improve your mood. It can lower your perceived exertion. So it actually, the effort feels a little bit easier. It's not going to feel easy, but it will make it feel easier. The maximum dose per day is around 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And I think that's a lot. If you're a coffee drinker and you're drinking coffee throughout the day, you might be taking in something like 3-4 milligrams per day. If you're not a coffee drinker, you're definitely going to want to be on the low end of that, and you're going to test it. There's different sources of caffeine for athletes. There's gels, there's coffee, which you can have before you start. There's no coffee on the course. I've never seen that. And there's pills. There's lots of other different types of, someone had like some type of gummy thing with caffeine. There's all different types of products. Before you race, 1 to 300 milligrams 1 hour before is really the recommended amount. Now, if you're racing at different times, which we can go over, we can talk about how to time that a little bit better. I don't get caught up personally with the timing of it. I usually have that early in the morning and then might have like a small amount of caffeine right before and then maybe a caffeinated gel on the course. But that's me. I worked with an athlete that drinks coffee all day long. And I said, well, if you're going to be running all through that time where you'd be drinking like 3 or 4 cups of coffee, you're going to need to have caffeine in the form of a gel during that race just to make you feel like it's a regular day. Excessive intake of caffeine can be very harmful. It can cause GI issues, which are not ideal while you're running. It can cause shakiness, nervousness, increased heart rate. These are not ideal. If you're trying to run and exert your body, you don't want to be feeling some of these. They can be very distracting and also really scary too. So hydration. Here's an example of how to hydrate. And again, you need to test it out. See how your body feels and see what feels what feels right to you, and also the conditions. There's not one set way to hydrate. As we know, we're training in like really hot temperatures, like the one who's training in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. if you're racing New York, your hydration strategy is going to be very different. This past year, I ran Boston, and at the start of the race, it was kind of warm. And as the race progressed, it got even warmer. And I should have adjusted my fueling plan or my hydration plan and taken in more hydration. So that was a little bit challenging. But so it's not static, it's going to change, and figure out what works right now. So before you run, sipping about 10 to 20 ounces of fluids, and actually coffee and tea, those count in that 10 to 20 ounces. And that's about 1 hour before. And I say sip because you don't want to chug it. If you wait too long, like if you're doing one of those evening workouts and you start chugging fluids, it's going to stay in your stomach and it's going to slosh and it can cause cramping. It actually takes time for your body to absorb those fluids. So sipping it is definitely more ideal. During your race, you want to take in around 3 to 4 ounces every 15 minutes. So I see a lot of runners carrying handhelds. And if you're planning to do something like that, I think that's fine. Find out the race rules, see what your course allows and what hydration products they allow you to carry. I think some won't allow the vests, some will allow handhelds. So check in with your race and your rules of what's allowed on the course. But it's individualized. So, this is an example, 3 to 4 ounces. An ounce is around like one gulp. So depending on how the person who is filling that water cup, I've worked at water stations, I volunteered at those. Sometimes I worked with my son, and some of those he was filling up all the way, and some he was filling up halfway. So it's really hard to really gauge how much exactly is in each cup. And then after, you want to replenish all the fluids that you've lost. So that's really hard to know because we don't know how much we've sweat. So I just encourage athletes to sip fluids until you're peeing and your pee is a pale yellow. That is when you know you are rehydrated. So this would be great to practice during your long run, just to see how much you need. I see people walking around with gallons of water. I don't think you need a gallon. I do think you need to sip. And I think there is another way to be a little bit more precise. If anyone is interested, I can, I'll share the information about a sweat test. I can always follow up with a little bit more detailed information. But a sweat test is a way that you can estimate how much sweat your body loses. And the way to do that is to weigh yourself before you go for a run, and then you run for 1 hour. And then after that run, you weigh yourself again and you take off any wet clothes, you try and wring out your hair, and then you can kind of get a sense of how much your body loses. I had one athlete do a sweat test this week and he lost 3 pounds in 1 hour. And if he continues to run and lose 3 pounds an hour, it's likely that towards the end of his marathon, that's going to really have an impact on his performance and likely cause some overheating, can cause GI issues, and it can really affect his overall marathon performance. I'm just going to ask if anyone has any questions right now.
Amy, we do actually have two questions. So getting back to the caffeine, Tara mentioned that she's not a coffee drinker and doesn't really have caffeine in general. Do you still suggest it for running long distances? There's another question after, but let's get to this one first.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you have to experiment with it and see how you feel. I think you could either try having a cup of coffee in the morning or a tea and then go for a run and see what that feels like. Do you feel like your heart is racing? Does it feel like you're shaky, or do you get a stomach ache? Like those are signs that I'd probably not use the caffeine. You could try the caffeinated gel and see how that feels as well. So I would test it. Would I tell every single athlete to use caffeine? Probably not. I think it's really a very specific preference.
Sounds good. As someone who also doesn't drink caffeine, I appreciate that. Brain wanted to know if pre-workout is recommended before long runs or would it cause a crash? She's thinking of the pre-workout powder that is used before lifting workouts.
So the pre's, I believe, are around 275 milligrams of caffeine, if I'm not mistaken. The one that I had an athlete showed me a label recently, and it had 275. That is a ton of caffeine. Now, I would also look to see what else is in there. So if you have carbs in there, then you have to account for that. But I think that's a lot of caffeine to have as like, I'd call it a bolus. That's a bolus amount of caffeine to have in one shot. It's, your running is different than lifting because lifting, it's a start and stop activity, whereas running is a continuous endurance sport where your body really has no blood supply in your gut, and anything in your stomach that is not easily digestible can cause massive GI issues. So a pre seems like a lot of volume to me because it's a liquid and it's a lot of caffeine. So do I recommend it? I think you should try it. And maybe you do great. Like maybe that feels really great for you and you love it before all of your workouts. So I think experiment with that.
The other two questions are ones that I can answer after the fact. They're really specific to uh bathrooms and the gels on course, and I'm happy to answer those and we can go over them after. But Samantha was told that to gel every 45 minutes after the first 90-ish minutes. Does that sound about right?
Sure. Wait, so starting at 90?
Samantha, feel free to come off of mute to ask this question.
Hi, yes. Yeah, around that. So it's actually more mile 8. So I ran Boston and I had I ran for charity and I ran for Dana-Farber, and there was a coach who said after mile 8, if you're running around like a 4-hour marathon, right, just start to gel every 45 minutes. Does that sound about right to you, or?
I mean, I'll, I mean, I think everyone is different, but it seems a little late. And I
Okay.
think it's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that because once you start out a race with a full tank of gas, like, or, like a car would have a full tank of gas, like your body is stocked with glycogen. And once that glycogen is depleted, you cannot put it back in. So if you go to 90 minutes, you're already, chances are you're pretty depleted because it's a race. You're going faster. The course is a little harder than maybe what you are used to. So you're depleted. You can't undo that. And there's newer science that's really interesting that shows even with a half a tank, like half of your glycogen depleted, your body wants to conserve your energy. So it's going to slow you down and it's going to kind of activate fatigue symptoms and have you slow down. So even a half a tank, if you start gelling earlier, like I have athletes that might take a gel before they start, and then maybe starting their fueling plan at 30 to 40 minutes, and then continuing it around every cadence around that time. So your body's going to use that energy, the energy from the gel and preserve your glycogen. So we want to go as long as possible because towards the end of the marathon, you're going to use your glycogen to help kind of get you across the finish line, that and your gels. So hopefully that makes sense. And that's a good enough explanation does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.
So yeah, the bottom line is I wouldn't wait. I would do it earlier, but I would experiment. Like, how did that go for you then for Boston?
Well, I ran in 2018, which was the worst year on record with the 40-mile-an-hour winds and the hailstorm. So I probably am not the best poster child. I was just trying to not go hypothermic, but I finished. But so you would say every 45 minutes then, maybe once you start. So once you like start your gel, even if you start before your race, like around like the 35, 40-minute mark, just keep gelling until you finish.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And stay consistent. Yeah, be consistent and just not, if you don't feel up for one, like if you're too nauseous, then maybe take water and just postpone it a little bit, like 5, 10 minutes. But I wouldn't really drastically change your plan. Try and
Okay.
stick to it as close as you can. When I ran Boston this year, I was very nauseous because I was dehydrated
Yeah.
and I was taking half a gel at a time and I would just do it more frequently just because I knew if I fell behind that I could hit the wall.
That's good to know. And I just have one more question that actually this might be interesting. So have you heard of these? They're called like SIS, like they're isotopic formulas where you're not having to take water with the gel, which actually saves you time. If you're aware of these, do you have a preference for that versus maybe a gel where you have to, suck in some water as you're running?
And Amy, before you answer that, this actually answers another question. SIS gels are the gels that have been on course for the last couple years. just so you guys all know, they will be confirmed what gels are on course on the New York, Roadrunners, marathon website later in the season, but that has been what has been on course the last few years. I'll give it back to you, Amy.
So that's a great question. And yeah, I would say like what's, it's also great to have what's on the course. So does it matter if you're taking the ones without the water requirement? That's a preference. I mean, the consistencies of those, and they're bigger, so it's nice that those SIS are on the course, because then you can maybe just carry a few and then get some on the course. You still need to hydrate though. And if the conditions are warmer, don't be misled to think I could back off on my hydration because the gel doesn't require fluid. So it's kind of like you have to see what the race day is going to look like. Practice with maybe 2 or 3 different types of gels, and then you can decide which you prefer.
Thank you. That's great.
Fantastic. I think we have a couple questions, but I think it's better if we just get through the slides and then answer the questions in the Q&A just for the sake of time.
Okay, so let's go. Oops. So I think the next thing that I was going to go over was, the electrolytes. So this I get a lot of questions on. So I have an intern and she made this really great infograph on all the different products. This isn't everything. Obviously, there's so many other really great products that are available. But the things to know with electrolytes, there are key electrolytes that we want to focus on: sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium. Those are the main ones. And when you sweat, your body loses water and electrolytes. So you lose electrolytes through your skin. Everyone is different. It's based on genetics. It's based on the conditions. Everyone loses a different amount of electrolytes when they race or when they run. It's important though to have electrolytes because they're helpful for energy production. They help with mental focus and keeps your muscles firing. You need those electrolytes in order to make your muscles help you to push you through the race. And like I said, everyone has a different amount that their body requires. So here's some different products. And again, this is a preference. So I could tell you what I like. I like the electrolyte fast chews or the caps. I think a good starting point would be like around 200 to 300 milligrams per hour. And and it makes you thirsty because you're replacing what your body has lost. Salt makes you thirsty. So then that helps drive your thirst and how much hydration you should be taking. And so then you sip water along with that. You don't need Gatorade if you're taking in these electrolyte products. If you're doing things like LMNT or Scratch or Noon, you have to carry a handheld. So that's up to you. If that's something that works for you, or you and your coach or other people that you're working with have decided that that's your best product, then go for it. Like, carry your handheld and have those products in there to keep you properly hydrated. So I had an athlete using also the electrolyte caps, the little pills, and we had him tape it to his gels. So that worked for him. Another athlete, what else do? We hide them. You got to put them in all different places under your hat. You can put them in, if it's the winter or colder, you could put them in arm sleeves. But these products I think are really helpful, and it can make it a little bit easier depending on the weather. So if it's a warmer day, maybe you need an extra electrolyte tablet. If it's not that warm and you're not feeling like you sweat a lot, then maybe you don't need as much. I think right now we're sweating a lot, all of us, especially my friend in Florida. We are sweating a ton. So we are probably using these products a lot more. And as it gets cooler, you won't sweat, so you won't need as much. And again, everyone is different. So here's how to eat after a workout. And it's really important to eat after workout because it helps your body to recover. There's something called the glycogen window, and that is within about 30 minutes to an hour, your body is looking to reabsorb all of the nutrients that you use, like the glucose in forming glycogen and amino acids to help repair your muscles quickly. And you'll absorb more within that period of time. The recovery will continue for the rest of the day, but at a slightly slower rate. So you'll still recover and you'll still eat meals and it will still benefit you. But that glycogen window is when you come in from a run, if it's a morning run, rather than just hitting the computer and answering your emails or walking the dog or doing things, try and eat something first. It can even be something small, a chocolate milk, banana, or some type of small amount of food, and then do your shower or get ready for your day and have a proper breakfast. You want to have something that's like a mix of carbs and protein. I usually recommend like a 4-to-1 ratio. That's what the studies show, like 4-to-1 or 3-to-1, meaning carbs to protein. So that's like 40 grams of carbohydrate to 10 grams of protein. I don't expect anyone to count, and I wouldn't want to count myself. So I just gave some examples of what that would look like for foods. So fruit and yogurt is great right after a workout. A meal.
I was asking about a protein shake.
Yeah, so a protein shake is great. Those are usually around 20 grams of protein, but you want to make sure you're getting that carbohydrate too. So maybe a protein shake and a banana, or maybe and some dried fruit along with that. That would be awesome. Totally great if you're out or if that's easy for you, and that works really well. But protein shakes alone are not going to help restock your glycogen. There was a great study that showed even like having candy after a workout restocked glycogen faster. You want something that will hit your bloodstream at a faster rate and restock just in that time period. And then for the rest of the day, it's about eating nutritious foods on a regular schedule. Are there any other questions about that?
Can you overdo it with fuel?
Like recovery food or during the race?
You know what? Let's answer that question after. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. That's a good question. I'd like to know more about it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to carb loading. So race week nutrition, marathon fueling, like if you're fueling for your race, it actually starts the week before. So you've done all the training, now you're tapering. Marathon fueling starts 1 week before. So that's like topping off your glycogen stores for race day. It can improve your performance by 2 to 3%. Even if you're not performance focused, it's going to help you to prevent you from bonking, which is also known as hitting the wall. And the way to do this is to just gradually increase your carbohydrates at meals as it gets closer to race day. It doesn't mean you start eating carbs if you haven't had them at all, or if you're cutting carbs or you've been cutting. It doesn't mean to drastically change your diet. It means to gradually have some. If you don't normally eat carbs, like I said, changing your diet can actually cause a lot of bloating and GI discomfort, which we do not want you to have. So here's an example of a race day, race week fueling plan. So 3 to 7 days before. So that's like if your New York is on Sunday. So Monday to like Wednesday, eating 3 meals and snacks, aim for about 1/3 of your plate from carbohydrates. As you get a little closer, maybe Thursday, Friday, you might have some friends visiting, you might be traveling. Make sure you're getting in those carbs and just gradually increase them. It doesn't mean eat 3 bagels in your day or start eating a whole pizza. You don't need to do that. Just eat what you normally do and gradually increase the amount of carbs. And then the day before, again, low fat, low fiber foods. Aim for about 3/4 of your plate to come from carbohydrates, and you can have proteins and other foods along with that as well. And then what to eat the day before marathon. Plan your meals. I think that's really important. Again, if you're traveling, it's really hard. You can get out of your routine really easily. If you make restaurant reservations and you're disappointed or the menu doesn't have what you thought it would have, it can be very stressful. So plan out what you're going to be eating the day before to take another stressor out of the equation. Eat the same foods, and again, 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks, and those low fat, low fiber foods, and staying hydrated. And then here's some sample meal ideas on what to eat the day before. And I put this up here because people always ask and they get very stressed. So I can always, this is on the recording, so you can always refer back to this if you are needing some more guidance. So here's what race day, an example of a race day fueling plan looks like. And this is specific to New York or maybe like a Boston where you have a little bit of a later start. So I put a start time at 10:20. You might start at 11. You might start around 11:30, depending on how many waves they have. Maybe NYRR knows already how many waves. But you will have more time than you normally do before a run, so you need more food. So just be prepared for that. So this is what an example of a fueling plan can look like. A breakfast can be around 6 or 7 a.m. And that could be something like a bagel with peanut butter and a banana. 8 to 9 a.m., a snack, like a Cliff Bar and sipping some fluids. And then at 10 a.m. before you start, you can have that optional gel if that's something you've practiced and you've had before. You can have that. And you really want to just start eating and drinking as soon as you wake up. You don't want to wait and travel and then get, if that, it depends on how long it takes you to get to where you need to be, but I would focus more on the time and the logistics. The logistics on race day are challenging, so work that through with one of the Team for Kids coaches. I think they can be really helpful. And bring extra foods to the start line in case you're nervous or you are hungry, a little hungrier than you thought. Have some extra snack food with you. So tips to prevent hitting the wall. You want to finish with a kick instead of a crash. The end is so much fun because you're coming down Fifth Avenue and you get to go through the park. It is so much fun. So you want to feel pretty good as you can. So hitting the wall means you've basically run out of glycogen. Your body has run out of fuel. It occurs usually around mile 18 to 20. So that's like after the last bridge. After the RFK bridge. And you want to practice your fueling plan during your long runs, which I've mentioned before. So practice what your fueling plan is before you start out on your run and then what you're taking in during, and pay attention to that. Stick to that same plan. You might be distracted. I have a picture here of going over the Verrazano Bridge, and you might be going out faster than your proposed paces. You want to slow that down. Going out too fast can also burn through. It's like putting the pedal down to the metal all the way. You're going to use up more gas, more than you anticipate. So stick with your normal training plan. Carb loading can also help prevent hitting the wall. So if you're getting in those carbs the few days before, that can definitely help you. And fueling early and often. So instead of starting at like that 90-minute mark, or even starting when you start to feel tired, fuel early and often. Start that fueling plan early and then continue your fueling plan often. So the finish line, what happens at the finish line? Walk and eat. So instead of just standing there, try and keep walking and eating at the same time. You'll get a bag of food, like I'm sure you've seen at other races. You get a refueling bag. Usually there's something salty, a protein shake, a fruit, and maybe some other things. Start taking those in. Take in calories. Carbs and protein immediately after will help you with recovery. You don't have to eat everything in there, but as long as you're walking and eating, your body is going to start to recover, and then you can enjoy your time with your friends and your family, and you can call all your friends and tell them how awesome it was and what a great experience you had. My first marathon in New York, I did not refuel properly, and I did not get to call anyone because my head was on the pillow and I could hardly move. So don't do that. Try and have some food right at the finish, even if you don't feel like having it. Have like maybe pick one or two things and just start eating a little bit of it. And hopefully that will be enough to perk you up so you feel good and can enjoy your celebration. A couple other quick things that people overlook, and I just want to point out: sleep. The best thing you could do is actually nothing. You're running a lot of miles. Let your body rest, and you can absorb the runs and all of the fueling a little bit better. Benefits for sleep: you recover, digest foods better, you have an improved mood, and you reset your hormones for the next workout. All are very important. Supplements. I usually get a lot of questions on this, so I just thought I would head it off with a few. First, it's most important to follow a balanced diet. Eat a balanced diet, and supplements are to actually supplement all of these nutritious foods that you are taking in. They're not to replace it. So here are some examples of some, like protein, vital protein, collagen, BCAAs. These are all fine as long as you're eating foods and you're using these in addition, or maybe if food is not available, like if you are at work or at finishing a workout and this is your only option, I think that's totally fine. Is there a major benefit? Studies aren't really showing anything that's so substantial that I would recommend everyone use it. But they're not harmful. I don't think any of these are harmful. Magnesium, some people use that to help with sleep or leg cramps. Iron, if you are deficient in any of these, iron, B12, or vitamin D, you absolutely should be taking that. And you can go to your doctor and ask for lab work for those specific labs to be drawn, and then you take a proper supplement, because those three in particular will affect your performance. And they can lead to injuries too. Vitamin D deficiencies can definitely lead to injuries. Ketone IQ, that's a newer product. That's fatty acids. I don't recommend it. I haven't seen any athletes PR or do amazing with that product. I think if you're running at a slower clip, or if you're doing more of a longer, slower endurance event, I think there could be a benefit for that. But I also think you might need to be following like a ketone diet in order to be fat adapted. So there are definitely benefits to it, but I'm not sure that racing a marathon with gels and ketones would be ideal. It could just cause GI issues. If anyone does it, I would love to hear. I'd love to hear your experience.
And Tracy wants to know about a multivitamin.
Yeah, I think a multi is great, definitely. And look at what's in it. Make sure that you are aware that there's nothing extra added to it. But a multi is a really great thing to have because you're using up a lot of your energy and producing a lot of energy. You definitely want to have all those nutrients available. And then creatine, I think, is great if you are looking to build muscle. The only issue we have with it, that I've seen is it also it bulks you. It puts on weight, like muscle weight. So that might be great for someone running shorter distances, like a dash, like 100-meter dash, or even a 400. But there's no clear evidence above like an 800-meter. So like definitely not for a marathoner. I think there's a lot of studies coming out, and that might change very quickly. But for now, it doesn't look to benefit longer distances. So really, in summary, include carbs, proteins, and fats at every meal. I think that's really important, and that will just help keep you energized and help keep your runs on target. Practice your race day fueling during your training runs and record that. Write it down. Fuel early and often to prevent hitting the wall. And with that, that is my last slide.
Fantastic. I don't know about you guys. I've learned so much. We do have a couple of questions. Also, I do want to say we have our head coach, Ben, has been learning very much because even he and I decided that we wanted to learn more about nutrition too. He is on the call, so if there are any other questions later on for Ben, have him come off mute. But there he is. Grace, thank you. There he is. Grace, thank you for clarifying. Grace was saying during the race, can you overdo it with fuel?
Yeah, absolutely. Like your body can absorb around 60, like 1 gram per minute is really what an average person can do. Now, if you train your body to take in more fuel, like Kipchoge, when he did the 2-hour marathon, he was taking in 100 grams per hour. But he trained that, and maybe his genetics allows him to do that. As you train, you're increasing the number of enzymes that will allow your body to digest and convert that into usable energy. So I'd say take as much as your body can tolerate. There are studies showing up to 120 grams is ideal for the cyclists, especially. But cycling is different than running because we're jostling our stomach. So I think, yes, you can overdo it. And the way you would know that is you get a stomach ache, you might throw up. I think you practice and you see what feels best for you. This is a starting point. The information I gave you is a starting point, and you can kind of play around with that and see what feels best.
Awesome. Ben, this actually might be something you can help with too, kind of a 1-2 punch on it. Because as you noted, Amy, before, with the timelines and the waves and with our coaches knowing what it's like on the TFK 10 race morning, Tracy asked, how do you plan your nutrition when there will probably be a lot of waiting around before you start the race, especially because we have runners in totally different waves. So we've got some people that may be there for several hours in the start, and we've got some people that get off the bus and then go right to the start line.
Do you want me to do that?
From like, just, I mean, Amy, if you want to go ahead, I mean, I could just kind of give like the coach's rule of thumb. We call it a second breakfast. That's really good because I think to Ashley's point, you're just going to be out there for a while. You have to prepare that you may be from the time you leave your hotel room, whatever time of the AM it's going to be, until the time you get on the ferry, to Staten Island, to a bus, to get in there, how long you be at the tent. I think how Amy talked about earlier, you're going to have like 3 or 4 hours. You're probably going to be okay, but you could be there longer. So we like to say, have a second breakfast, whatever that may be. There's obviously no microwaves at Fort Wadsworth, so whatever you choose to eat, make sure that you can either put it under the armpit to give a little bit of a warm up, or something that can be easily transported and then eaten. And make sure it's something that I think, as Amy has really harped on, I think is important, is you're used to it. You know exactly what you're putting into your body, because this is go time. There's no point in throwing darts at the wall at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And if you want to write it out, I think I write it out for my athletes, even the professionals that are racing every weekend. They're nervous, and you're nervous too. And like, there's so many logistics for this. So, ask either a friend, or if you're working with a nutritionist or dietitian or a coach, just write it out, and then you could just implement that. I think that makes it a lot easier.
Okay, we've got 2 more questions. One of them I actually answered in the chat, but I think it's worth mentioning that with all the carbs and gels, where are the bathrooms located on the course? I know that they're not out on the marathon website yet, but generally speaking, Amy, you've run this race before. Ben, you've worked at this company for a long time. What should the people, especially that have never been to New York, be kind of expecting in terms of how far apart that? Sorry.
My favorite bathrooms, it's like a wall of bathrooms. I think it's mile 13, right? Am I on the right? Right before a bridge, is it the
Oh,
Cuscatus?
for the Pulaski, yeah, the
Yeah,
Pulaski. That
Pulaski.
makes sense. Yeah.
Literally a wall. If you can hold it to that point, then you don't have to wait. So that's an important one. And then over the RFK bridge, underneath on runner's side left, like this should be important information. Runner's left, again, you will not, 20 seconds you'll lose, maybe. That is a great bathroom. You don't want to be on the course and then waiting. That's the worst, because then there's a line and you're feeling a little frustrated. Or if you have to go, you want to go. Like, you want to be able to use it and not wait. So it might be urgent. So, those are the 2 that I can think of. And there's another one on First Avenue that I can't remember, like somewhere before, like before going into the Bronx.
The Willis Avenue Bridge, probably about right. And one of the great perks out there about the TFK, is that the start tent's got plenty of personal porta potties that we all get to use, that only we get to use.
And the tent is heated, which is great on a cold morning.
I know.
Gosh,
I mean, I cannot tell you. I mean, there are. I've been to the fort a few thousand times. I can't remember. It's literally like there are thousands of porta potties on Fort Wadsworth. However, TFK runners, we get special treatment. So at your tent, you'll have plenty of porta potties to get yourself going. There are porta potties also in the corrals. So even if you've done all your business before you leave the TFK tent, you're being marshaled to wherever your corral is. Get in line. It's always safe. Is get in line to use the bathroom in the corral. And if you have to go again, get back in line. You're going to be in the corral for probably a good 30, 40, maybe minutes up to an hour, depending on how quickly you guys get in there. But Amy's recommendations of the porta potties on course are fantastic. Hopefully, during your training, you'll have trained your stomach and your GI to get you through what you have to get through. But, as nature calls on race day, you can only put her on hold for so long. And if you have to make a pit stop, they're around the water stations, but there are some areas where there are more offerings and hopefully less lines to get yourself in and out as fast as you can.
Yeah, you're group runners, we got you. Mark wants to know, for fueling in a marathon, if you take more than 3 hours, do you start with 60 to 80 grams per hour at the start, or only after the first 3 hours, and do 30 to 60 in the first 3 hours?
So I asked the same question when I heard this information. There's a really great scientist that presented this, Asker Jakendrup. It's a funny name. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's wonderful. So he suggested you're 30 to 60 for the first 3, and then beyond that is you increase it. I think it's what you can tolerate. Maybe you just include Gatorade then in addition to your fueling plan, and you don't change too much. Like, that's what I was thinking. I would just add Gatorade after 3 hours.
Awesome. That is all that's in the Q&A. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to submit them here, or you can come off mute and ask them. I will say it is 7:05, so we're happy to end it for people that don't need to stay on the line anymore. If you do have any questions, maybe if you have a few minutes to stay, if people have questions, we'll still record it that way in case other people have the same question online that weren't able to make it can answer. But I want to thank all of you guys for joining us. This has been really fantastic. I'm going to reactivate the chat because I know a lot of you like saying thanks and goodbye. And again, any questions you guys have, feel free to come off. If you do, I'm a video queen, so please feel free to show us where you are, your face, everything, because we love getting to meet all you guys. And you're welcome, Mark. Mark said, thank you. Awesome session. John, what's up?
Hey, thanks for doing this. This is super helpful. Is there a target intake level for like sodium and calcium and some of the key electrolytes that you mentioned, similar to the target intake for carbs?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's like very individual, but I always recommend starting at around 300 milligrams of sodium per hour. Start there, see how you feel. If you feel like it's helping you and you feel energized, and it should make you thirsty, and then you drink fluids. That's a great way to gauge like how much to take. I have some athletes that take way more than that. I mean, that are taking like 1,000 to 1,500 per hour, but they're getting it in different forms. They're getting like liquids, they're getting Martin product on the course. So I think you just have to start and experiment. And again, those different conditions are going to be different. Oh, there's a patch that I use. I use the Gatorade patch. I was experimenting with different products. So there's Gatorade patch. So it's, I think, called Gatorade X. And then there's Levelin, I believe is the name of the company, that you can literally send in your sweat and they'll analyze it for you. And I can't remember the other one. There's another product company, but it's expensive, you know, so you can do that. And it's only good for those conditions. So you're not racing in these types of conditions unless, you know, I don't know, maybe your marathon soon, or it's in a warmer environment, but, or Miami marathon. But I don't think, you know, it's not going to be, you know, able to duplicate it. So, but it's information and it's fun. I have a lot of clients that like that kind of stuff.
Thanks.
Matches. Wow, it's a brave new world. Love it. Any other questions? And if you can't think of one now and one pops up, I did not say this at the beginning, but it is something that we say in every single clinic that we have. And Ben, please don't tell on my boss about this, but teamforkids@nyr.org. If it's a question specifically for Amy that Ben is not sure exactly the science of it, I'm happy to ask Amy and we can get back to you. If there are questions about that anything our coaches can answer, I'm happy to pass them along to Ben. Any questions at all, teamforkids@nyr.org. This has been a lot of really great information, but also know that a lot of the more particular minutia about your start times, what's specifically going to be available on course, bathrooms, this and that, we will be giving you all the information later as we get closer to the race itself. So just know that. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us. And we really appreciate